Welcome to the very best part of my broadcast week. Our location, a familiar one, Unconventional Diner. Our guest, Frank Fahrenkopf, who is the co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates. And for 2 weeks, we are recording this on May 29th. For 2 weeks, Frank Fahrenkopf has been a co-chairman without debates. Frank, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Major. Good to be with you.
I want to ask you just a very basic question. There is a presidential debate scheduled for June 27th of this year. Do you believe that debate will actually happen?
I don't know. I have my
What's
doubts.
your hunch?
Well, having gone through, starting in 1988, I've done 33 presidential and vice president general election debates. There are a lot of things that have to be worked out. I think I saw the other day former President Trump saying that he wanted the president to take a drug test. I think the Biden people probably said no. I don't know whether it's been followed up. I'm also told that the Biden people want to be seated at a table for the debate rather than standing at podiums. Trump has one time said that's okay with me, and another time I heard him say, no, we should be at podiums. There are so many different things that are not, as I understand it, worked out right now. Are there opening statements by each? Are there closing statements? How long do each of them get to respond to a question? How long does it go? Is it going without a break? Ours go 90 minutes without a break. Are there going to be any ads? So there's a lot of questions, I think, in my experience, having done this for as many years, that aren't, to my knowledge, worked out yet, that could prevent it from happening. And
because of your experience with these negotiations, each and every one of these things that is unresolved could be a circuit breaker.
That's right. That's the reason that we were created back in 1987 was that the history of two campaigns sitting down and arguing and arguing and arguing. You remember, we went 16 years without debates. The little things can get in the way. I don't know whether that's as true here, but there are a lot of things. And there's some other things that I don't know, maybe CNN has worked it out. They're saying that in order to be invited to participate in the debate, that you had to satisfy the requirement of 15%. We have it in 5 polls. They have it in 4 polls. But then you must also be qualified in enough states that you can get enough electoral votes to be elected. The problem is that, my recollection, my study was, on that date of that debate,
June 27th,
there will only be 7 states out of the 50 who have completed their ballots with regard to who's going to qualify presidential.
Right.
And
the point being that on June 27th, no one is going to meet that threshold standard.
That's correct.
Of either party or a third-party candidate.
Well, now, I read today that might be changed.
Okay.
By the Democrats doing it virtually. Now, I don't know.
Yeah, but they're going to do that virtually in August or something, a couple of weeks before their scheduled convention to comply with the unresolved impasse in Ohio.
Correct.
That would have no effect on the June 27th date.
I don't think so.
So, big meta question, Frank. As co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates, is the Commission on Presidential Debates dead?
Oh, absolutely not. We are, right now, organizing, completing our planning, and so forth. We have to wait to see what happens. The difficult thing, and the people who are really suffering here, beside the American people who won't get what they ought to have, 3 presidential and a vice presidential debate, are these 4 universities. These 4 universities that have stepped forward and have agreed to sponsor the debates. They're so excited. The students are excited. It's incredible. And I know right now they're disappointed.
And that's always been an integral part of the Commission on Presidential Debates approach, to link it to universities, to make it not only a nationally educative process, but a lingering and legacy educative process for the universities.
And I know you've been on.
I've been to many of those campuses, yes.
And I mean, the school has special programs for the students. We try to involve the students as much as we can in putting on the debates. Hell, Chris Matthews, I tease him and say he became famous from his every time he would have that thing outside and he'd do his show out there and the kids would yell and scream and so forth. It's an exciting thing on the college campuses and part of our educational function. And to lose that is one of the really negatives. And the other is the town hall meetings, when the average American can ask the President of the United States or the former President of the United States a question, face to face, and get an answer. That was an important part. And in fact, it is the most important. The town hall meeting is the most important forum with regard to how the public in the United States feels. They'd rather have that than just a regular debate.
To whom or to what do you attribute this effort to sideline the Commission on Presidential Debates?
Well, I think it was both sides. I think I've known for a long time that people that are important to the president,
President Biden,
President Biden, didn't really like the debates.
You said that Anita Dunn hates the commission.
Well, yeah, maybe I spoke a little too roughly. But Anita was part of a study that was done some years ago that was critical of us, and they had their own ways of probably solving it. In fact, if you look at the letter that was sent out Wednesday 2 weeks ago or a week ago, where they announced what they were going to do, much of what is in that letter with regard to what they're planning is what came out of that commission.
That Anita Dunn was a part of.
Yeah, but that she was a part of it. So, but I don't know whether I can't speak for the Biden
Do you withdraw
campaign.
the comment that Anita Dunn hates the commission?
She doesn't like us. Let's say that. Maybe I was a little too strong, and I know that. Remember, about a year and a half ago, the RNC announced, obviously put up by Trump, that they were going to withdraw from the Commission on Presidential Debates.
They're not a member.
They've never been a member.
Hello.
I always wondered how the hell you could withdraw from something that you were not a member of, because we never deal with the parties. We only deal with the candidates who meet the qualifications, constitutional
And they're
qualifications.
designated representatives to
Correct.
negotiate with you.
Normally, once that's done, each side names someone who works with us. Ron Klain has worked with us for years and years.
Former
representing-
chief of staff to the president.
Yes, but also
President Biden.
been
Yeah.
I think he was also with Al Gore, wasn't he? So,
Absolutely.
And he was the person working with us, knows how we work. Last time it was Rudy Giuliani for Trump. But there have been different ones, and we communicate with them. We never have anything to do with the
So when the
parties
RNC
whatsoever.
pulled out, which was a non sequitur, but nevertheless that indicated to you that Trump was hostile to the commission.
Correct.
And remains hostile
Yeah,
to the
as
commission.
far as I know. Well, he did say about a month ago that he would debate with the commission, even though we're corrupt. so that I thought I really was
a step up,
A
Frank.
step up, yes. So I don't know where they are now.
When you tell me and my audience, Frank, that the commission remains ready and will remain ready for what, and when will you know that you're back in or that you're out for all intents and purposes this cycle?
If the debate takes place in
The June 27th, right.
debate, then we'll see what happens. If it doesn't take place, then I don't think the one they're talking about in July will take place.
September 10th, rather.
Or September 10th. I didn't know what the other date was. Oh, they're talking about maybe a vice presidential.
Well, CBS has offered. We have heard nothing back other than from Kamala Harris.
Of course, I knew what CBS had done because now then we'll know. Although I've got to tell you, there's a lot of pressure on these campuses, and we're concerned about them, and we hope that they can ride this out. We're hoping that we're going to know, in the next few weeks, whether things are really going to happen or not. And I think we should be able to.
Would July 4th be a date that we should all think about as whether or not this is going to happen for you or not?
I would hope we could go that far. Yeah,
July
that long.
4th.
Yeah, that would be great.
But if there's no commitment to the commission by July 4th, then probably this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Really?
My guess, yeah.
All right, when we come back for segment 2 with Frank Fahrenkopf, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates, I want to ask him what will be lost to the country if, in fact, come July 4th or sometime in August, it's clear there will be no Commission on Presidential Debates as we have come to understand it. I'm Major Garrett. Frank Fahrenkopf's our guest. Stay tuned for segment 2 in just a second.
We assumed that the Democrats could nominate Mickey Mouse and we could nominate Donald Duck, and we both start with 40% of the vote.
Welcome back to Unconventional Diner. We thank them for their hospitality. We've been here before. We'll be here again. Frank Fahrenkopf is our guest, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates. So, Frank, if there are no debates under the auspices of the commission, what will the country lose?
Well,
from your perspective?
I have always felt that if you want to be president of the United States and or vice president of the United States, you ought to have to stand on the stage, answer questions for two purposes. Number one, to not only describe to the American people what you're going to be doing if you are elected with regard to issues that they're concerned with in their everyday life. So that's the easy thing. How do you handle these particular problems, whether it's the economy, whether it's education, and so forth? The other thing that most people don't realize, and I'm asked very often, done 30 plus debates, what have you learned about the American people? And what I've learned is the American people want to like and respect their president. That's very clear. We've gone through 2 cycles now when we've had candidates on both sides who are not majority approved by the American people.
Right.
So being able to see how they conduct themselves during the debates, whether they obey rules, whether or not they are with their opponent respectful, how do they go forward? I mean, if you think back, I'll always remember.
Can they or do they think fast on their feet?
That's right.
Are they responsive?
All of that. Remember Al Gore? I remember Al Gore
2000.
walking over and standing in front of George W. Bush was town hall meeting, and Bush kind of looked at him and smiled, went like this, and that, you know, it didn't help Al Gore. I think it hurt Al Gore.
Those moments can be revealing from your perspective.
Right, that's right. So I think there are 2 things that they're missing with regard to what actually happens in the debate. The other is what I mentioned about the educational function that spreads across the country. I mean, at Notre Dame, I know Father John Jenkins erects a majorly big screen outside on the green area, and you got thousands of students who are watching. That happens all over the country. It's important in the education process. And
is it an institutional pillar of a presidential campaign from your vantage point?
It would be kind of egotistic of me to say yes, but others can make that judgment, and others have made that judgment. I think it has become part of the tradition of how we elect the people who lead our country as president and vice president. And at a time where so many institutions that we've known about over the last 20, 30, whether you're talking about schools, whether you're talking about religion, whether you're talking about corporations, everything is sort of disappearing in how we're going forward. And I would hate to see this also disappear. But that's not to say that if we don't do debates in this cycle, because either they've done it and succeeded, and I said the other night in an interview that if they're able to succeed with these 2 debates that they're planning, they're done right, they educate the American people, and I will give them a salute. Because the only reason we exist is to make sure debates take place. Mm-hmm. Now, if they crash and burn, even if after July 4th, we'll still be there, and hopefully we'll be able to fill what's empty.
What do you say about the political science journal research that says presidential debates of the kind put forward by the Commission on Presidential Debates typically, and they've measured this in various ways, don't change people's minds. They reinforce existing impressions of candidates? What
we've done almost over every cycle is go out and do some polling afterwards to see what effect the debate may or may not have had on voters. And it's been year after year, 65 to 70% of the people have said it has been an important factor. It's been an important factor in how they voted. It's not the only factor. It may not be the most important factor, but it is a factor in their decision-making process as to who they're going to vote for. So I think that is something that's very, very important. There's no question, let's face it, right now, Trump has a hardcore, whether it's 25 or 30. On the left, Joe Biden has a hardcore 25 and 30. They're not going to care about the debates. They're going to vote the way they want to. But when I think back to the days with with President Reagan, when we were running the 80 and 84 campaigns, we assumed that the Democrats could nominate Mickey Mouse and we could nominate Donald Duck, and we both start with 40% of the vote. And the battle would be in those states how easy you can get to 270 electoral votes in the middle. Nowadays, the world has changed. Now, the last thing I saw is 27% Republican, 27% Democrat. And what's that? That leave 46% in the middle. Now, they're leaners, of course, in there. But it's really a different world in that regard. And so that's very, very important, is how you present the issues to those people and how they make their decisions.
This will be a question that might sound, from your vantage point, self-serving in that it sets you up. It's kind of a softball. But do you think in this particularly polarized, and I know that's a cliche, but it's not inaccurate. Sometimes cliches can be tiresome, but still true. And I think polarized is a tiresome phrase, but still true, that structured debates are even more important in this particular cycle than previous ones?
I think so. I really do. And like I say, I don't know how they're going to structure this thing if it happens, if the first debate happens. And whether or not after that they do have a second one or a vice president. The whole thing could crash. And we just have to wait and see. I think that people are
You're hoping for it to crash.
No, that's not true. Really.
Okay.
No, I can't say that. As I said before, if they can do it, if they can get over all the humps and bumps that you have to go through to produce these things, and if CNN's got some humps and bumps to get over, to get it on, and how do they handle it? Are they going to cover it at the same time that they're producing it and doing it? That's pretty, from a journalistic standpoint,
right.
That sort of presents some problems. But if they can do it, fine. We'll accept that and hope that American people listen closely to what they say and do and go forward.
Let me get into just a little bit of television nitty-gritty, because yesterday CNN sent around its access rules for the debate on June 27th, meaning what the networks have to show and have to say. And it's a heavily branded CNN enterprise, meaning if CBS carries anything, it has to have very specific references under CNN dictates of what we call it and its sponsorship. And if we run any video of it, or if we simulcast it, all the bugs that carry CNN logos have to remain unobstructed. Those are kind of things that, let us say, and I think you can catch my drift, ladies and gentlemen, other networks really are not into. Okay? They don't dig that. They don't dig showing other people's stuff on their platform. Well, that's one of the things the commission regularizes, eliminates.
If the White House pool, as you know, it goes out, it goes across everything. We're on every social media platform.
Right.
We're on around the world.
My point is, some are going to be reluctant. I don't know what our network's going to think about it. They don't ask me, so whatever. But some are not going to carry it, which means the reach will be far less.
Far less.
You typically clock, meaning the commission-sponsored debates on the presidential level, clock anywhere from 60 to 80 million, depending on the candidates and level of interest.
Actually more than that, because C-SPAN is not included in Nielsen.
That's Nielsen ratings,
and we don't know who is doing it on
But
the computers.
CNN, I'm going to guess, Frank, right now, if they are lucky, they'll pull 35 if this debate happens.
But you know, Major,
Do you think that's about it?
I think they changed their tune. As I understand it, when this first came out, they said they were only going to have it for their own company. No one else was going to get a feed of any sort. ABC, as I understand, immediately said, no, we'll share if there's a second debate. And that sort of changed where CNN was going. So I haven't read or seen what you're talking about now, but yeah, I can present, I can assume
it's going to be a smaller audience. It's going to be a smaller audience.
We believe that the first debate 4 years ago was about 120 million watch. When you put in everything, C-SPAN, campuses around, they got a large screen. That's one screen that's counted, not all the people that are in the room. But that's our best estimate. And another factor, you asked me some time ago what's lost. We have a program.
Hold that thought, because I got to go to break.
Okay.
When we come back, more on what's lost. Frank Fahrenkopf, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates.
The Biden people were celebrating when it was accepted by the Trump people, and the Trump people said, they fell for us. We got them in our trap. So it depends who you talk to.
Welcome back to the Takeout. Frank Fahrenkopf, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates. You had an extra thought you wanted to add about what would be lost if this cycle in the presidential campaign there are not structured Commission on Presidential Debates.
I mean, most people don't know about this, but we have actively, for maybe 25, 20 years, been in 35 countries around the world, helping them put on debates. Very, very brave people, non-government officials, and they're in some countries where the people in power don't want debates, don't want freedom, and we've worked with them. We continue to work with them. We will bring probably 20, if we do it again, if we're successful, 25 or 30 of them from all over the world who come here and watch, and they look at the debates and how we do it. And interestingly enough, the comment that has always been important to me, they look to see whether their two candidates shake hands. Some of them were very upset when Hillary and Donald didn't shake hands on a number of occasions.
In 2016.
It was always assigned to them in their country, if they could get, when talk about tough politics, have the people come out and shake hands, it calmed down.
In other words, these debates and your auspices over them is a democratic small d export of this country.
No question. No question.
Which you believe has lasting value.
Lasting value.
And you've seen it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Some of our people actually go over and help orchestrate it and put it together for you. So.
And you bring this to other countries as sort of a way to have the process play out in their country.
Democracy spreading, hopefully. And there's a lot written that democracy in other countries is
in retreat.
Is going in retreat.
Are you afraid of that?
Well, we all should be afraid of that. We all should be afraid of that. But I don't know. It'll go different from country to country, but it's something important to, I think, have this and continue working with people around the world who look at these debates as really something that shows what democracy is about.
How do you choose moderators?
Well, the hardest thing in the world is to choose the moderators. There used to be pretty easy if you went with a Bob Schieffer.
A name we are all familiar with.
Yes, I do.
The great beloved Bob Schieffer at CBS.
Yes. You knew that he was going to be down the middle. But you go now.
Down the middle, is that the most important quality?
Yes. Now, today, I don't think you can get anybody who doesn't. Some people perceive being one way or the other. In fact, most of the particularly not the major networks like CBS, but others that are on cable. There's a right wing and there's a left wing and not much in between. But what we try to do about 3 or 4 months out, we start examining what people are saying if they're on television. Where are they? Are they trying to balance things? Are they trying to be fair? Now, we did something that was very unusual 4 years ago. For years, we never had a pencil press moderate, because our thought always was, unless you're used to working with that in your ear and someone talking to you off stage, it'd be pretty hard to be a moderator. But so many of the print media now go on the Sunday talk shows and so forth. And so we chose Susan Page of USA Today, who did the vice presidential debate, did a great job, and represented the pencil press well.
As a proud member once of the pencil press, I appreciate that reference. It's a bit out of favor, but pencil press. Anyone who worked at a newspaper, we would call them digital journalists now, but there was a time when we were known as the pencil press. And yes, Susan did a great job. Yeah. And the idea being that if you're not accustomed to the kind of things that are told to you through an IFB and earpiece, which print reporters simply aren't. I know, because I was a print reporter who made the transition to television. That was one of the hardest things to get adjusted to. It's a bit of
someone's talking to you about time. You're trying to think of your next question.
Right.
How much time? Wait, you spent too much time with A. You've got to square up with B. Mm-hmm. So it's not easy. And so we make those decisions as close as we can to the debate in question. And as you know, Sheaf took himself off the air mm-hmm. for a period of time, and a number have done that. Chris Wallace did that too, and and so that anything that they said or did during the week or 10 days before wouldn't in any way cause a problem to their monitoring and doing the job of being a good moderator.
The two nominees for the major parties are older than any either sitting president or nominee in our history. Do you think that makes debates more important than ever?
Well,
evaluating their acuity and their abilities?
Yeah, the age doesn't bother me. I'm older than both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It is, as you said, their acuity. How are they here? Can they remember things, and particularly, I think President Biden has been beat up pretty much for things he's done and said over the last 3 years. I've known Joe a long time. I knew him. He's always been a guy down the middle, as I knew him, and always spoke well. But you've got these misstatements and so forth, and it's been overdrummed by certain people in the media, and so. And I think
it's a weaponized part of the Trump campaign rhetoric.
That's right, and I think the State of the Union speech he gave was really good for him. I think it solved with many people the difficulties he might have been having and how he could overcome them. And I think his people are going to say, look, we saw that. He'll do fine in the debates. He was also said 4 years ago that he wasn't going to be able to handle the debates, and I thought he handled them very well. So, yeah, it's going to be looking at both of them, I think, of whether or not...
Who do you think has more to lose in a debate format this year, whether it's yours or somebody else's, Trump or Biden?
I always think if you're the president of the United States and you could lose it because of something happens, I think it's just natural.
The risks are greater.
The risks are greater
inherently,
because it's inherent. When if inflation is bad, you're the president. You take
you own
the hits.
inflation.
That's right, and those sort of things. So yeah, I think it's tougher on the president. That is
in that
challenging.
regard. As the June 27th debate has been negotiated thus far, who won that negotiation?
Well, to be fair, I don't know what else has been done other than the announcement, but it seems to me that the negotiations that I know, and at the time I got the letter and it was agreed to by the Trump people, I thought that Joe Biden his people had done a good job in setting up something, as I said, a lot of which was in the report that was done opposing our commission some years before, and therefore I thought they had a leg up. And when it was challenged, not challenged, when the former president's people said, we'll go, we'll be there, we agree, I thought that really that the Biden campaign had done a very good job.
Let's specify. So lack of crowd, you think that benefits the president?
Lack of crowd, I think so.
And the mute button benefits the president?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because if we had not yet what our procedure was going to be, but I thought the mute button worked very well 4 years ago when we put it in the final debate. Never had to use it.
But the threat of it created decorum, or the semblance of a decorum.
But there's so many other things. Who gets to answer the question first? Do they make opening statements? Do they make closing? All those things are the things that are not yet worked out, and may be worked out, and perhaps negotiations will
But
change
so
things.
far as we know it, you believe the Trump campaign's hunger to debate might have led them to give up more than they should have.
Well, it's interesting because the Biden people were celebrating when it was accepted by the Trump people, and the Trump people said, they fell for us. We got them in our trap. So it depends who you talk to. But both of them now are claiming that they outdid the others. So we'll have to wait and see what the result is to determine who is the winner.
Very good. That is the voice of Frank Fahrenkopf. Before we go to segment 4, I'll set you up with this question. If the commission doesn't sponsor any debates in this presidential cycle, and we'll get this answer on the other side of the break, will it exist in 2028? Hold the answer. We'll get that on the other side. I'm Major Garrett. Unconventional Diner is our host restaurant. Stay tuned for segment 4 of The Takeout in just 1 second.
He was the mayor of the world after 9/11, and I see him now and what he's going through now. I have such sympathy for him.
Frank Fahrenkopf is our guest. Unconventional Diner, our host restaurant. It's a hypothetical, Frank, but it's a hypothetical with teeth to it. If the commission is not sponsoring debates this year, does it exist after this presidential cycle?
That's a hard one to answer, but my guess is it depends on whether they're successful in the two debates.
Who's going to decide that?
Well, I think the public's going to decide it. We'll look at it fairly and honestly. If they do the job and there's no longer a reason for us to exist, as I've told you, the only reason we were created, and it was after the '84 election, the League of Women Voters had given both candidates the
which
right
had been
to veto.
previously sponsoring since '76
Correct. That's
presidential
correct.
debates and vice presidential
They
debates.
told both campaigns that they could veto the choice of moderator, and in those days it was a moderator and 3 reporters. And the two campaigns vetoed over 100 journalists in this town. And that raised a little difficulty in your profession. And
understandably.
Yes. And so two studies were done independently, one at Georgetown, and the Center for Strategic International Studies was there, and one at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And it was not just on debates, it was on the whole process. But both of them came to the same conclusion, that there should be created an entity that exists for one purpose and one purpose only, namely to conduct general election debates between presidential and vice presidential candidates. Paul Kirk was then the chairman of the DNC. I was chairman of the RNC. We got together and we created the commission in 1987, and we have handled every debate since, the 33 that I've told you about. So the reason it was created is the fight that was going on back. It was the debate over the debates. And so we were able to avoid that over the years. We've changed the moderator thing. Now it's just a single moderator, so you can drill down. They can't get away with a quick 2-minute answer. And so we've modified it a great deal. And it depends. If they do a good job, if the candidates are able to put on debates that the American people are happy with and satisfied with, there may be no need for us. We'll have to wait and see. But we're going to wait and see. We're not going to fold our tent.
What does your gut tell you?
My gut tells me that we may have a future.
And you better stick around.
Better stick around.
Corporations help fund the commission, do they not?
We're funded privately. We get no money from the federal government, no money from the parties, no money from the candidates.
And no money from the universities? Or
no money well, the universities...
In-kind contributions of the facilities and staff and things like that.
Staffing and things like that. And they're very
But
few.
you list every year the corporations that
give. They get
Anheuser-Busch has always been there?
Well, yes, and you people in the media who really like that tent that Anheuser-Busch.
I don't know what he's talking about. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Feed and keep your throats dry. They may be gone this year. We're hoping that they come back, but they get no advertising. There's no advertising, as you know. It's 90 minutes straight, no advertising. In the pamphlet you get when you get there, their names are there, but that's it. Mm-hmm. We do it all privately, and there's been some wonderful foundations over the years that have helped us.
You were chairman of the Republican National Committee from 1983 to 1989. You know Rudy Giuliani well. What's happened to him?
I wish I knew. I have just the greatest feeling in my heart for Rudy. I always have. We've been friends. He was the mayor of the world after 9/11, and I see him now and what he's going through now. I have such sympathy for him.
Sympathy?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I understand he may be going to bankruptcy. He has judgments against him, and I tell you...
You believe he's brought some of this on himself?
I don't know. What I have in mind every time I think of Rudy is that press conference he did where
the RNC.
My wife called me, Rudy's bleeding. I ran in, and of course it was hair dye, I guess,
yeah.
running down. And I said, oh my God, what's happened to him? I wish I knew. I wish him the best of luck, good health and best of luck, but I don't know.
Was that an ignominious moment for the Republican National Committee to have a press conference in its main lobby, a lobby I've been through many times, a place you know very well, better than I do, in which lie after lie after lie after lie was told about the 2020 election?
Well, you've got to remember that the chairperson of the RNC at that time was appointed by Donald Trump and did pretty much what Donald Trump wanted. I held press conferences in that same place many, many times when I was chairman. But that was a decision that was made by her. She was elected by people. Almost every state was controlled by Trump. The Trump campaign did a heck of a job in taking over the RNC. And as you see now, they've really taken it over. Where it goes in the future is going to be an interesting question.
But that press conference could have been held on a less politically identifiable plot of land.
Correct.
And the RNC will own that press conference forever.
Yes. Yep. Unfortunately.
As someone who believes in the Republican National Committee, is a member in good standing, do you regret that decision was made?
Well, yeah, I do regret. I wish it hadn't been there. And I also wish it hadn't happened to Rudy, wherever it was going to be. I still have a great love for him. He was a great man at a great time in our country when it was needed, and I hope he comes through this okay.
Earlier in our conversation, you talked about the fragility of democracy. It's an ongoing topic in this country. You mentioned that you worked with President Reagan, not only as chairman of the RNC, but with the campaign in 1980. There are those who say, hey, look, Ronald Reagan was an outsider, just like Trump is an outsider. He had lots of institutionalist establishment Republicans who didn't like him, who tried to undercut him. They're pretty much the same.
Well,
give me your perspective on that analysis, that facile analysis.
The interesting thing was when Donald was running for office and then elected, if you looked at the newspapers in Europe, and then you went back and looked at the newspapers in Europe after Reagan was elected, it was pretty much the same. Who is this person? Doesn't know what they're doing. They're going to wreck freedom and all the rest of it. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. And while
you think Reagan came into office with more experience and a more coherent ideology?
Well, he
Trump?
came in with more as a politician because he'd been governor of California,
sure.
Of course.
2 terms.
So he had that. And I don't think that Donald Trump came in telling anyone he had experience in government. He was a businessman, and he was going to try to put a businessman's approach to it. And, he from the standpoint of a lot of people don't like him, don't like what he says, don't like his whole attitude. But I think when you look at his record, and I think what you're going to hear in the debates go forth is compare his record, his 4 years. They're going to try to make this case, I think, to what the record is now of this president after 3.5 years. So
that's always the
important.
case. Yeah, very standard.
Yep.
What about January 6th?
I could never understand that. I think that was a disgrace. I was so sorry for my country when I saw that. It was a disgrace.
Who's responsible for it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether
you don't know?
I don't know. I know who talked to a crowd ahead of time. I've never looked at everything that was said. There's 2 sides to that. But Donald was involved. He certainly, a lot of people who went in there thought they were going in for Donald Trump, whether he really wanted them to go in and do what they did.
Do you think we'll recover from that?
I do. I think we'll recover. I think the Democrats will always raise it every time a Republican is going to run for office. So they're going to have to live through that as a party and candidates in a party. It'll be out there. But I think we're survived. This is a great country. We've been through some very, very nasty things. Go back and look at things in the Civil War, what happened after the Civil War, happened in the Depression. The American people are strong and bounce back. And I've great. My concern, though, I must tell you, is what's going on in schools, what's being taught.
We will get to that in the Takeout, Outtake Especial.
Okay.
That's the voice of Frank Fahrenkopf, our special guest. We'll see you next week for the full show. Stay tuned for your Takeout, Outtake Especial.
There's a lack of these teachers teaching patriotism, what it means to be an American, not only for what you get, but what your purpose ought to be.
Welcome to your Takeout, Outtake Especial, Unconventional Diner, our host restaurant, Frank Fahrenkopf, our special guest, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates. You were going to say something as we ended the main show about schools. You mean universities or do you mean secondary, primary schools?
I mean both.
Everything educational.
I don't think, as far as I know, and I read a lot of it, whether or not we're teaching the history of this nation, and including what happened with slavery and all the rest of it.
Good and bad.
It all ought to be taught. Pledge of Allegiance. I took a Pledge of Allegiance every day, all through kindergarten and all the way up. There's a lack of these teachers teaching patriotism, what it means to be an American, not only for what you get, but what your purpose ought to be. As
what
John
your side of the
Kennedy,
bargain is.
But it's not being done. On the college campuses, I think you've got a lot of people who are being misled by other people, but unfortunately getting in the way of other students studying, spitting on Jewish people, saying it doesn't belong in college. And we've seen what's happened. 2 or 3 presidents of universities, major universities, have gone, and those facilities have been tainted.
You've said in previous interviews that some of our most prestigious universities, quote, will never be the same.
I don't think they will. And I think they're marked by what happened, unfortunately.
Like Harvard.
Columbia, I guess stuff is still going on in UCLA. Yeah, I think they've heard it because if you're a parent and you've got a junior or senior in high school and they want to go to college, are you going to send them to one of these schools where they've seen what's happened on the campuses? I doubt it. So it's going to be a tough recovery.
3 questions we ask every guest. Take them in whatever order you prefer. Most influential book in your life and why? All-time favorite movie, and what's your favorite kind of music?
I love country western and 60s and 70s and 80s rock and roll.
Okay.
The book I've read more than it's James Michener's The Source. I never read a book twice, but I read that book twice. That book really, really fascinated me. And I forgot your third
Movie.
movie.
One of your all-time favorite movies.
Boy, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I'll tell you one it's not my best. I watched it last night.
Okay, there we go. Recentism is
Napoleon.
accepted. Napoleon.
Was not as good as
The Joaquin Phoenix Napoleon. Yeah.
It was not.
Yeah.
It was not what I expected.
Kind of dull.
Kind of dull.
Well, think about it this way, Frank. If you're scrolling and you see this movie, no matter if it's a third of the way in or half the way in, you're inclined to stop. What kind of movie? What movie would that be?
God, I love war movies. I love, and I've been very involved with the Eisenhower Memorial and so forth. And I went over with an Eisenhower group to Normandy, and seeing what happened there in those movies that were produced, many of them after what
Longest
happened.
Day, Saving Private Ryan.
Those, yeah.
Saving Private Ryan.
They're great. They're really great, and they show what it means to be a citizen and what your duty is as a soldier and so forth.
Voice of Frank Fahrenkopf. It's been a pleasure, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next week, folks. Thanks so much.